My daughter demanded I sell my grandmother's necklace to pay for her college. She excluded me from graduation and defamed me online. But my father-in-law exposed her publicly, and her dad kicked her out when his new baby was born. I'm 45 years old. I work as a graphic designer from home, and what happened with my daughter Charlotte a few months ago basically destroyed our family in ways I never imagined possible. I guess I should start from the beginning, when everything still seemed manageable, when I thought the divorce was going to be the worst thing we'd have to face as a family. Was how naive I was, right? Charlotte was 17 when I discovered that her father, Tyler, had been having an affair with his secretary for 5 years. 5 years. I mean, it wasn't a one-night mistake or a midlife crisis that lasted a few months. It was a complete parallel relationship that he maintained while I cooked his favorite dinners and ironed his shirts for business meetings where he probably saw her afterwards. I found out in the stupidest way possible because Tyler left his phone unlocked on the kitchen counter, and I saw a message that said, "I love you. I can't wait to see you tonight." And when I asked him, he swore it was a wrong message, but I had already seen the name. I had already seen the profile picture. So I confronted the woman directly at her office, and she didn't even have the decency to deny it. She just looked at me with pity and said, "Tyler should have told you years ago." I'm sorry. As if she were the victim in all this. The divorce was horrible. Like all divorces, I guess. But I tried to keep things civilized for Charlotte. She was about to start her senior year of high school, and I didn't want all this shit to ruin her grades or her college applications. Tyler kept the big house because his consulting business had better income than my freelance work, and I moved to a smaller but nice apartment. And Charlotte had her own room there. Although she spent most of her time at her father's house because, it was bigger and her friends already knew that address. I'm not going to lie, that hurt, but I understood it. She was a teenager and needed stability in the middle of the chaos. What I didn't know at that time was that Charlotte had developed a relationship with Tyler's girlfriend. Yeah, the same secretary he cheated on me with for 5 years. Apparently they got along super well. They went shopping together. The woman helped her with her math homework because she was really good with numbers. Of course she was. She'd been managing Tyler's business finances for years. And she was basically positioning herself as some kind of alternative mother figure. And Charlotte ate it all up. Like she loved the attention, loved having someone who treated her like an adult instead of like the teenage daughter whose life had just exploded. I tried not to judge. I really did. Because I didn't want to be that bitter ex-wife who forbids her daughter from seeing the father's new partner. But the truth is that every time Charlotte mentioned something they had done together, I felt like a knife was being stabbed into my stomach. So we get to about 8 months ago, when Charlotte was in the home stretch of her senior year. One day, I was cleaning out the attic of my apartment, organizing boxes I had brought from the old house, when she found a dark blue velvet box that I hadn't seen in years. She opened it and there was the blue sapphire necklace that had belonged to my grandmother, then to my mother, and that was supposed to someday be Charlotte's. It's a beautiful piece. I'm not going to lie. It has like 15 sapphires set in white gold with an Art Deco design that you don't see anywhere anymore. And I know it's worth quite a bit of money. Although I've never had it formally appraised because I never intended to sell it. It's the only thing I have from my mother, who died when I was 23. And I always imagined giving it to Charlotte on her wedding day, or at some important moment in her life. Charlotte came down from the attic with the necklace in her hand and her eyes shining in a way that should have alerted me immediately. She said, "Mom, this is incredible. I never knew we had something like this." And I explained the family history, how my grandmother had bought it in the 30 seconds with her first paycheck as a teacher, how my mother wore it at her wedding, how I had worn it at my wedding to Tyler. Brutal irony, now that I think about it. Charlotte listened to it all and then, just like that, said, "You should sell it to pay for my college." Just like that, without preamble, without consideration, as if she were suggesting we sell an old sofa on Facebook Marketplace. I was like frozen, because I couldn't believe what I was hearing. I told her, "Charlotte, this necklace is a family heirloom. It's not something we sell to pay expenses." And she immediately got defensive. She said I had promised to help her with college, that her father could only cover half because he was investing in the business. I mean, spending money on his new life with the secretary. And that if I really loved her, I would find a way to pay her full tuition. I explained that I did have money saved for her college, not as much as we'd like, but enough to cover what her father didn't pay with reasonable student loans. But she became obsessed with the necklace. She said it must be worth like $50,000 or more, total exaggeration. It's probably worth like $20,000 max. And that would pay for everything without needing loans. The conversation got more and more tense. I was trying to stay calm, explaining to her that some things have sentimental value that exceeds any price, that this necklace represented our family's history, that someday she would understand why it was so important. But Charlotte didn't want to hear any of that. She accused me of prioritizing a piece of old jewelry over her education, of not loving her enough to make a real sacrifice, of being selfish and clinging to the past. When I told her my decision was final, that the necklace wouldn't be sold and we would find another way to pay for her college, she literally screamed, "Well then, don't count on me for anything else," packed a suitcase and went to her father's house that same night. Tyler called me 2 hours later, super angry, saying, "How dare I deny Charlotte money for her future, when I obviously had valuable assets available?" I explained the situation with the necklace, the family importance, and he laughed. He literally laughed and said, "It's a necklace. It's not a family member. Sell it and stop being dramatic." I hung up the phone feeling completely alone, completely misunderstood, and started questioning whether I was really being reasonable or if I was as selfish as my daughter had accused me of being. The next few months were a nightmare. Charlotte basically cut me out of her life. She didn't respond to my messages, didn't answer my calls, and when I tried to visit her at Tyler's house, he told me Charlotte had specifically asked him not to let me in. Her high school graduation was approaching in May, and I had been planning that celebration since she was little, imagining how proud I would be, the photos we would take, the party we would organize. But like 2 weeks before graduation, Charlotte sent me a text message. She didn't even have the courage to call me, saying she only had 2 tickets for the ceremony and had decided to give them to her father and Sarah, that's Tyler's girlfriend's name, although it cost me to even write her name. Can you believe it? My own daughter, the girl I carried for 9 months, who I raised for 19 years, was excluding me from one of the most important moments of her life for a woman she had barely known for 2 years. I responded asking her if she was sure, if she really wanted things to be like this, and she just said, "You decided to prioritize a necklace over me? Now I'm prioritizing the people who really support me." I cried for hours that night. I couldn't believe we had gotten to this point, that my relationship with my daughter had deteriorated so much over a misunderstanding about values and priorities. Graduation day was one of the worst of my life. I stayed home, watching Facebook where other graduates' parents were posting photos, and tried not to think about Charlotte being there with Tyler and Sarah, probably acting like the happy family we never were. But Raymond, Tyler's father and Charlotte's grandfather, did go to graduation, and apparently things didn't go as Charlotte had planned. Raymond called me that night and he was furious, like I had never heard him that angry in all the years I'd known him. He told me there was a party after the ceremony at Tyler's house, and that Charlotte gave a speech where she thanked her father and Sarah for being her pillars of support and called Sarah her lucky charm, who had arrived at the perfect moment in her life. She didn't mention me even once, not even to say she was grateful for the first 17 years of her life. Raymond said it was like I didn't exist, like I had never been her mother. He was so outraged that he confronted Charlotte right there, in front of all the guests, asking her how she dared to exclude and disown her own mother that way. And here comes the part that still gives me chills. Raymond told me he had planned to give Charlotte incorporation papers for a small investment company as a graduation gift, something that was worth probably $100,000 or more in future potential. But after the speech and the way Charlotte had treated me, Raymond took the papers, tore them into pieces in front of her, and told her, "I thought you had inherited some family values from your grandmother, but I see you only inherited ambition without character." Charlotte was in complete shock, and Tyler tried to intervene, saying Raymond was being dramatic and unfair. But Raymond told him to shut up, that this was his fault for raising such an entitled and spoiled daughter. After that, Raymond called me and specifically told me not to give Charlotte a penny for college, that she needed to learn that actions have consequences, that she couldn't treat people like disposable objects and expect to be rewarded for it. I was torn, honestly, because part of me wanted to punish her for how she had treated me, but another part was still her mother and didn't want her to ruin her future over a family conflict. Tyler called me that same night, yelling at me that Raymond was crazy, that I had poisoned Grandpa against Charlotte, that all this was my fault for being so stubborn about the stupid necklace. And things only got worse. Turns out Charlotte After losing Raymond's graduation gift and realizing I wasn't going to give her money either, went into complete panic. She went to Raymond's house, cried, begged him to reconsider, and when he stood firm, Charlotte started lying. She told Raymond that I had rejected the invitation to her graduation, that it was me who decided not to go. Not that she had excluded me. She said I had been verbally abusive to her about the necklace issue, that I had yelled at her and told her she was an ungrateful person who didn't deserve anything. Raymond, who already knew my version of events, didn't believe her immediately, but Charlotte insisted so much that he called me to verify. I sent him screenshots of all the text messages between Charlotte and me, where you could clearly see that she had told me not to come to graduation, where I asked her if we could talk, and she ignored me, where I offered her the money I had saved and she rejected it, saying it wasn't enough without the necklace. Raymond was devastated, he told me. She wasn't just cruel to you. Now she's blatantly lying to manipulate me. That's not my granddaughter. I don't know who this person is. Raymond sent Charlotte a message saying he had seen the evidence, that he knew she had been lying, and that he didn't want to have contact with her until she stopped being so manipulative and deceitful. That was the exact word he used. Charlotte completely lost it. She started calling me, texting me, saying I had ruined her relationship with her grandfather, that it was all my fault, that I was a bitter witch who couldn't stand to see her happy. I responded as calmly as I could, telling her that she had created this situation with her own actions and lies, that I hadn't done anything except tell the truth. And then Charlotte did something I never imagined she would do. She started posting videos on TikTok about me, videos where she cried in front of the camera saying her mother had emotionally abandoned her, that I refused to help her with college despite having valuable resources, that I preferred to keep old jewelry rather than invest in my own daughter's future. The videos went viral in our community, like thousands of views, hundreds of comments from people who had no idea of the full context but were ready to crucify me in the comments. Friends, neighbors, even people I worked with, started sending me the videos asking what was going on. It was humiliating, devastating, and honestly, I had never felt so betrayed in my life, not even when I discovered Tyler's affair. This was my daughter, my own blood, using social media to destroy my reputation because she hadn't gotten what she wanted. Raymond advised me to make my own post with my version of events, with proof. And after thinking about it a lot, I decided to do it. I posted a video on TikTok and Facebook explaining the whole situation, showing screenshots of messages where Charlotte demanded I sell the necklace, where she told me not to come to her graduation, everything. I also explained the history of the necklace, why it was important, and how I had offered reasonable financial help that Charlotte had rejected. The response was overwhelming. Suddenly, I had hundreds of people supporting me, saying Charlotte was being entitled and manipulative, that I had every right to keep a family heirloom, that no parent should be emotionally blackmailed by their adult children. Some of Charlotte's videos were reported and removed for harassment and defamation. Several of her friends contacted me privately to apologize, saying they didn't know the whole story and now understood why things had escalated like this. Tyler was furious with me for exposing Charlotte publicly, but I reminded him that she was the one who decided to make this public in the first place. I was just defending myself from her false accusations. My lawyer, who had handled the divorce, advised me to sue Charlotte for defamation, that there was sufficient legal basis, especially because her lies had affected my professional and personal relationships. I decided to send it as a threat letter first, hoping Charlotte would come to her senses without needing to go to court. But things got even crazier before they got better. One day, like 2 weeks after all the TikTok drama, Tyler called me completely hysterical. Turns out Charlotte and Sarah, Tyler's pregnant girlfriend. Yeah, I forgot to mention she was pregnant in the middle of all this chaos, had a strong argument about something. I wasn't clear about what exactly. And Charlotte pushed Sarah. She pushed her so hard that Sarah fell against a table, and Tyler had to take her to the hospital to make sure the baby was okay. Sarah was fine. The baby was fine. But Tyler was absolutely devastated by what Charlotte had done. Tyler, who had defended Charlotte this whole time, who had blamed me for all the problems, suddenly completely disowned her. He told Charlotte she had to leave his house immediately, that he couldn't have someone who threatened his pregnant partner and his unborn child living under his roof. Charlotte tried to minimize what had happened, saying it was an accident, that they were just arguing, and things got out of control. But Tyler didn't want to hear excuses. He called her dangerous, unstable, and told her that until she received professional help she wasn't welcome in his life. Charlotte had nowhere to go. She called me crying, begging me to let her stay with me. But I told her I needed time to process everything that had happened, that I wasn't ready to have her in my space after how she had treated me publicly. It probably sounds cruel, and part of me felt horrible rejecting her when she was clearly in a desperate situation, but another part of me knew that if I let her come back without real consequences, I would only be reinforcing her manipulative behavior. Raymond ended up letting her stay at his house, but with strict conditions. She had to apologize to me publicly, she had to start therapy, and she had to get a job to pay for part of her college, since no one else was going to fully finance it. The next few months were a slow and painful process of accountability and, I guess, growth for Charlotte. She posted an apology video on TikTok admitting she had lied about several aspects of the situation, that she had been manipulative and cruel to me, and that she was working on herself with professional help. It wasn't the most emotional or eloquent apology in the world. Honestly, it sounded pretty rehearsed and forced. But Raymond and I decided to accept it and withdraw the threat of defamation lawsuit. Raymond also helped her get a job near the college campus where she was going to study, something part-time at a coffee shop, and Charlotte took out student loans to cover what she couldn't pay working. Charlotte basically cut contact with Tyler after he kicked her out. She doesn't talk to him, doesn't answer his calls, and apparently is very resentful because she feels he abandoned her at the worst moment of her life. Ironically, now I'm the secondary villain, and Tyler is the main villain in her narrative, but honestly, I don't care anymore how she categorizes things in her head. I only care that she's learning, growing, and taking responsibility for her actions. As for Charlotte and me, things are improving very slowly. We talk like once every 2 weeks, short and careful conversations where we both avoid the difficult topics. She's in therapy, which is definitely helping. And according to Raymond, she's been working on entitlement issues and understanding how her actions affect other people. I'm also in therapy now, processing all this trauma and trying to understand at what point things got so out of control and what I could have done differently. Although my therapist insists I can't be responsible for Charlotte's decisions. Like 3 weeks ago, Charlotte asked me if we could have coffee, just the two of us, without Raymond as an intermediary. I agreed, nervous but hoping that maybe we were getting to a point where we could start rebuilding something. We met at a neutral coffee shop, none of our usual places, and for the first time in almost a year I really looked at her. Really saw my daughter. She looked tired, thinner, with dark circles that weren't there before. But there was also something different in her eyes, like a forced maturity that didn't exist when all this started. She told me, "Mom, I know I lost something I may never be able to recover with you. I know I ruined our relationship by being greedy and stupid, and I don't expect you to forgive me or for things to go back to how they were before. But I want you to know that I finally understand why that necklace was so important, why it wasn't just about the money or college. It was about respect and values and everything. I tried to ignore because I wanted what I wanted. I responded that I appreciated her words, that I could see she was genuinely trying to change, but that we needed time, that this wasn't something that would be fixed with a conversation or an apology, that rebuilding trust would probably take years. We drank our coffee in mostly uncomfortable silence, with small attempts at normal conversation that felt forced but not hostile. When we said goodbye, Charlotte gave me a quick hug, the first in almost a year, and said, "Thank you for not giving up on me completely, even when I deserved it." I drove home crying, not from sadness exactly, but from a kind of emotional release I didn't know I needed. I feel like maybe, just maybe, there's a possibility that someday we'll have something resembling a mother-daughter relationship again, although it will never be what it was before. The necklace is still stored in my safe, exactly where it's been all this time. Sometimes I take it out and look at it, thinking about my grandmother who bought it with so much pride, about my mother who wore it at her wedding, about all the generations of women in my family who valued it not for its price but for what it represented. And I wonder if someday Charlotte will have a daughter, if by then she'll have matured enough to truly understand why some things are priceless, why some decisions can't be measured in dollars or college tuition. I hope so, honestly, because that necklace still has her name engraved in my will. It's still destined for her, only now with the condition that she appreciates it for what it really is. Raymond tells me I'm being very generous considering everything, that many mothers would have cut contact permanently after what Charlotte did. But I guess that's the difference between being a parent and being anything else in life. You can't just quit, even when your child hurts you in ways you never thought possible. You're still there. You're still waiting. You still keep the door slightly open for when they're ready to come back in a genuine and mature way. It doesn't mean you're weak or that you're letting them walk all over you. It just means you understand that people can change, that mistakes, even huge and devastating ones, don't have to define a person forever. Tyler and I don't talk at all now, which honestly is a relief. Sarah had the baby like a month ago, a boy, and I know Charlotte hasn't gone to meet him. Raymond showed me photos that Tyler sent him, and I felt weird seeing them. Thinking about how this innocent creature is entering such a fractured and complicated family. I hope Tyler is a better father to this child than he was to Charlotte. Although, honestly, I don't have much faith in that considering how he handled this whole situation. Last week, Charlotte texted me asking if she could come visit me during her fall break, just for a weekend, without expectations that everything be perfect, but just to spend time together. I told her yes, that I would like that. And it's true. I'm not ready to act like everything is forgotten, but I'm ready to try to build something new, something different, something based on honesty and mutual respect, instead of the unrealistic expectations we both had before. It's enough for now, I guess. It's a start.